Joshua. Nice to meet you.
You guys ready? All right. Well, hello everybody. My name is Jacob, and this is Kyle, David, and Dylan, and we are very excited to be here today, representing the University of North Texas for this year's annual case study. We would like to go ahead and begin with an introduction of our main issues and our recommendation. Now, ICE is currently the nation's 6th largest refrigerated carrier, supported by its 1,500 tractors and its 2,250 trailers. Now, as they look to expand and remain competitive, they have intermodal as an option. In an effort, as we go forward, we are looking for ways to best implement that expansion in a way that best fits ICE's capabilities as a national carrier. We have concluded that considerable savings can be realized in total network costs by using a mixed network fleet. Now, our design of our fleet greatly reflects the regional hub and spoke approach that we have taken in an effort to implement continuous optimization as a method of taking advantage of those unique cost and capacity advantages of intermodal, as well as the unique speed and flexibility of long-haul trucking. As a result, we recommend modifying 174 of the current 2,250 trailers, acquire a dedicated 1,435 containers, and maintain the remainder of your long-haul fleet for those expedited services with no access to intermodal lanes, as well as use them for strategic drayage solutions when we can not contract out those drayage options. Going forward now, we would like to tell you a little bit more about how we got to our conclusion by doing a comparative analysis of the costs and capabilities of our various modes of transportation. Now, the intermodal option has grown increasingly attractive because of the issues that plague the trucking industry, such as capacity, congestion, driver shortages, and that increasing importance that people are placing on a carrier's carbon footprint. This, coupled with the rail industry's significant investment in intermodal infrastructure, it has driven those TOFC, COFC options to look more attractive when compared to long-haul over-the-road trucking. Now, thanks in part to intermodal, rail has begun to close that competitive gap in distance with trucking. Traditionally, rail has had the advantage in the 750-plus mile range. This graph was created by the Federal Railroad Administration in 2010. Now, 6 years later, we think that market shift is nearly complete. As a rule of thumb, anything over 500 miles is worth considering going rail. And this gives ICE a great opportunity to get into the TOFC, COFC market to make themselves more competitive. Now, with an understanding of the advantages that intermodal poses, we can then compare the different types of intermodal transportation, TOFC and COFC. Now, the advantages of TOFC lie in its speed, the chassis availability, as well as its capacity advantage per volume per load. Because of this, we felt it prudent to modify a portion of our long-haul fleet so as to accommodate those customers that require expedited shipments that have access to intermodal lanes. If you refer to page 9 on our case route, we actually have some information that supports that finding. The COFC advantages revolve chiefly around its capacity advantage in cost per shipment. It's because of this that we recommend those shipments that have long hauls and access to intermodal lanes that we go COFC. Furthermore, our research has found that the rail industry prefers containers because of their double stacking capability. This translates to lower rates for carriers, which then translates to savings for our customers. Now, going forward, I'd like to hand it off to David.
All right, thank you, Jacob. We're now going to show you a bird's eye view of our approach. So if you please turn in your binders to pages 12 and 13, take a look at our maps. As you can see, ICE operates a very diverse network spread across the entire continental U.S. Now, in order to interconnect these markets through intermodal operations, we've decided to take a regional approach utilizing a hub and spoke style system. we have strategically located our hubs within 300-mile and 500-mile radiuses of the major population concentrations in the continental United States. Additionally, each of these cities have existing railroad intermodal terminal facilities. Another aspect to our approach is our mixed fleet. We hope to provide our customers with flexibility in the capability that we provide. So we'll be focusing on 3 key variables for our equipment: cost, volume, and speed. Now, as I just mentioned, we chose to locate our hubs based primarily upon those distances, as well as the proximity to the major rail interconnecting lines. We'll be utilizing BNSF and Union Pacific's railroad network here in the west, as well as CSX and Norfolk Southern's railroad networks in the East Coast to provide transcontinental service and to realize that cost and capacity advantage of railroad over truck in those 500-mile and greater distances. Now, while we will be primarily focused on COFC options for the railroad, we will also retain a small fleet of TOFC to give our customers more flexibility. Now, you may be wondering, what are we going to do with all of our existing long-haul trucks? Well, what we propose is we take all of these assets and we concentrate them at our hubs to act as the spokes of our operation. They'll be primarily handling our shipments greater than 100 miles, up to 300 miles, and even up to 500 miles for those instances where we'll have customers who desire the better speed advantage of truck versus train under 500 miles. These shorter hauls will also serve as a strategic safeguard for us with the looming driver shortage. A major factor that is often cited as influencing this projected driver shortfall is the very grueling nature and unattractive seeming lifestyle of a long-haul trucker who must spend often days, weeks, or months away from home out on the road. And we like to generally keep our drivers within about a day's driving distance of our hubs. Now, as far as our drayage operations are concerned, we'll be contracting those out to other firms at our hubs to utilize those under 100-mile shipments. Now, the issue of environmental sustainability weighs very heavily on the public conscience. And as transportation managers, we realize the enormous impact that our industry has on the environment. And we believe that we have a tremendous responsibility in mitigating those negative effects. In the food market in particular lately, we've seen a greater emphasis on organic and fair trade food sourcing. Quite simply put, our customers care about the integrity of where their food comes from. At ICE, let's make them care about the integrity of how that food gets to them. By going intermodal, and especially if you look at long-haul trucking versus railroad, the fuel savings are absolutely astronomical for the railroad. And because of that, the carbon footprint is also lessened. Simply put it, intermodal is not only good for our bottom line, it's also good for our planet. And I'm going to hand it over to Dylan, who's going to put some numbers behind these strategies that we have laid out for you.
Thanks, David. So within our case, we are given several percentage volumes by commodities by the length of haul, as you can see here. Using this, we wanted to determine how we were going to mix our fleet. But first, we had to come up with that strategy. So we came up with those 3 values of cost, speed, and volume, and we found that in the case, we were only given our costs. So naturally, we came up with our point break, essentially finding where our each mode has its own cost advantages. As you'll see in the next slide, the truck has a cost advantage from 0 to 202.8 miles, TOFC from 202.8 to 250 miles, and COFC from 250 on. Now, this does not account for drayage because we have various external variables to consider. For one thing is the fuel surcharge. Now, it swings back and forth between rail and truck between 1.2 cents to 1.838 cents, dollars. In addition to that, we also have to consider the direction of drayage. If drayage decreases the total length of haul by rail, naturally it would gain a greater advantage over trucking. Furthermore, again, we have our speed and volume considerations and per ton mile. So here we have our breakdown of our fleet using these percentages and those mile breakpoints to come up with our total fleet considerations, and they will be separated out by each individual commodity into those hubs that David was speaking about. That brings us to those totals of 174 TOFCs converted from our existing trailers, and then purchasing 1,435 containers. So speed and volume, keep mentioning that. Not every payload is the same, of course. We always have to consider what the customer wants. If they want a faster shipment, of course, truck within 500 miles would generally be preferable, even though it might cost a bit, and that would naturally be passed on to the customer. So it is that idea of continuous optimization where we focus on our day-to-day operations, the price of fuel that day, what our customer is looking for, and the makeup of our fleet at each of those hubs to ensure that we meet our customer demands to the best of our ability. Now, again, we come back to the idea of why are we using TOFCs if they cost more per mile and we have such a short range? They do offer certain strategic capabilities, including not requiring chassis for drayage, and they have a larger payload capability than COFCs. Now we come to our tractor question, drayage. Currently we operate 1,500 long-haul trucks. And as David said earlier, we look to contract with owner-operators and small firms to utilize their drayage capabilities. And we didn't have any costs laid out within the case to consider purchasing more for our fleet. So by contracting with these smaller groups and using our current fleet for drayage and long haul, we look to conduct another cost analysis to determine how many more trucks should we add to our fleet, if we should in the first place. And from there, determine the benefit, especially based on the demand we are capturing. So now I'll pass it off to Kyle, who will talk about our equipment costs.
Thank you, Dylan. So I'm going to break down our equipment cost analysis. We use a straight line depreciation method for each equipment type to determine a yearly basis of the cost. For the reefer unit, we had to take a little different approach as the expected life of the product was expressed in hours as opposed to years. We based our calculation on an average usage per year of each of the reefer unit. And so we came up with a number of 3,566 hours of the year our reefer units would be in use on our equipment. And with that, we were able to calculate the yearly cost. It's important to note that the 3,566 hours per year makes the equipment life of a reefer unit about 7.1 years. Next, we were able to, afterwards, break it down into a per day cost basis based on the different equipment types as well with their associated costs, so the variable cost of fuel for our reefer units, our chassis cost for a 53-foot container, and all the respectable maintenance costs for each equipment type. And you'll notice that our lowest operating cost is with our 53-foot containers at $8.99. Using that per day cost, we were able to break down our cost over the load cycle. So we have our costs associated in transit, when empty, and dray, and also, for a total of $125 over the 14-day load cycle. And with that, that is a 16% saving over using the same 14-day load cycle with the TOFC, which gets us to our return on investment. We had to calculate a break-even point on our equipment based on a yearly basis. So for our container, we had to calculate, we know that it's 12 years for a container over the useful life, which is also going to be about 1.5 reefer units for one container. So our total cost, including our maintenance cost for the reefer unit, as well as our container, comes out to about $10,000. And we believe that we can hit this break-even point by adding a 1.2 cent freight charge per ton mile in addition to our miles margin. And so what is our required return on investment? It's hard to calculate because we don't know the true cost of investing capital for ICE, but we do know that an optimal range for return on investment for capital expenditures is between 15 to 20%. We do believe that over time we will be able to attain this. I'm going to pass it back to Dylan so he can answer our case questions.
All right, so question one of the questions we received yesterday was regarding the payload capabilities we have with regards to weight with long-haul tractors, lightweight dray tractors, and their cubic load. So as you can see above, trucking has the weight advantage for both long-range tractors and lightweight tractors. However, with the lightweight tractors, of course, it's not necessarily a total advantage, especially when it comes to TOFCs, because these lightweight tractors using a trucking trailer only, it does have a slight weight advantage, but it's not generally going to be used to go as far, due to, in part, because of its gas mileage. So when we look over at the lightweight tractors, the real advantage comes in for trailer and flat car. In terms of cubic load, we find that both of the trailer modes have a floor pallet capacity of about 30 pallets, whereas for our containers it's 28 because of that reduced length. Question 2 is regarding door-to-door economics and lowest costs of 3 different moves. Move 1 being lettuce from Salinas, California to Chicago, Illinois. Move 2 being candy from Hershey, Pennsylvania to Akron, Ohio. And move 3 being meat from Garden City, Kansas to Boston, Massachusetts. So as we can see, move 1 and 3 have the lowest costs when it comes to container on flat car, but move 2 has a lower cost for trailer on flat car. This is due to, in part, the mileage in drayage for that particular move. As we can see, though, further in the question, it asks about how our options would change if the fuel price increased from $1.75 per gallon of diesel fuel to $3.50. And we decided that it actually reinforces our options. Because as you can see, just for truck in move 1 and 3, the costs for that move already are significantly above the other 2 options. Adding a higher fuel cost to that will only bring it further up. While the profit looks appealing, we still want to provide a cost savings to our customers. So we feel that using this intermodal option only strengthens that connection with our customers, especially as we approach $4, maybe more. As $4 and up, generally per gallon, it ends up being the primary cost for a trucking company. Now, at question 3, it asks us for a recommendation, and if you'd like to refer back to slide 5, where Jacob initially mentioned our recommendation, we considered 3 primary variables: our speed, volume, and cost. Speed and volume being primarily customer-driven. This comes mostly in part for our continuous optimization strategy on a regional approach, where we're focused on day-to-day basis. We need to ensure that we're meeting customer demands and not just focusing on the bottom line necessarily. So by passing our savings on to the customer, we can create a healthy repertoire and essentially grow our business. Now, at this time, I'd like to thank you for listening to our presentation, and I'll open the floor to questions.
Would you guys be kind enough to go back to slide 34, please?
Yes.
34. So when you look at that, I want to make sure I'm reading this right.
Okay.
Are you saying that the profit margin is better at $3.50 per
As a
gallon?
result of the increased fuel surcharge, it's charged as a percent of revenue.
Understand, so what you're saying is under move 1 and 3, we will make more money going OTR than we will go intermodal.
Yes, however, this is due to the margin for trucking is, let's see, 1.07% of our total cost. But with the added, let's see, if you could go back to the one where it talks about the fuel surcharge, that's where we find that coming from. At that point, the $3.50 compared to $1.75, you've essentially doubled the percentage that we're charging based on revenue.
So what's your recommendation here on each one of these? Are you going to base that recommendation, what are you going to base that on?
We want to base it on our lowest overall cost, because by using the lowest cost model, we are able to, if we want to, charge more in total, but we're still costing less overall. By using truck, charging $3,601 as opposed to half of that to make a slightly lower margin, just based off of these, it doesn't seem nearly as attractive. And we would like to pass these savings on to our customers.
Pass all other ones on the customer?
Not necessarily. I'm saying we can add that to our bottom line if we choose to.
Did you consider any kind of transit time differential in this? Is it related to some of these moves? Because you got lettuce going from, forever to forever, right?
So
How long does the lettuce last?
the lettuce, well, we looked at general lifetime of these products. So they're pre-chilled before they're added onto our containers, and generally when they're refrigerated, I believe the average temperature was about 40 degrees Fahrenheit, they tend to last much longer than when they're actually on the shelf. So we found that these transit times do not generally play too big of a part, especially on these longer hauls, where trucking, you could probably get there in about 3.5 days. Going by rail, you're looking at maybe 11 days with those fixed days per move. So that 8-day difference doesn't seem to have too great of an impact. We did some studying on just the lifetime of these products, and lettuce seems to not be too big of a problem.
You had a hub and spoke model. Explain that a little bit.
So
I can
I'll let you
do
do
that.
it.
So with the hubs, they'll be interconnected a longer distance away. Would you mind going to slide 13, Jacob? And it's also on page 13 on here. So with our hubs, we'll be interconnecting those hubs that are greater than about 500 miles away or 300 miles away via the rail lines. BNSF, Union Pacific here in the west, CSX, Norfolk Southern mainly in the east. And then once, like for instance, if we're going from Long Beach to Dallas, we take that on a BNSF train into Dallas, and then if it needs to go to Houston, for instance, we take that via truck.
So you're hub and spoke at all the railheads?
Yes, sir.
How do these spoke built around existing facilities, or are these facilities you're proposing to be built?
Existing facilities. I had done some research into CSX's new Charleston connector. However, we feel like it would be safer to go ahead and use the existing infrastructure. And then possibly, as you can see, you've got North Carolina up here. You see, this is the population density. The darker areas represent denser areas of the population. And it would be in a very good spot for us to put a hub, but for now, we'll only utilize existing facilities.
Right, so when you talk about the existing, you're talking about the existing rail infrastructure?
Yeah, the
or-
rail intermodal facilities, like the Alliance Yard in Dallas Fort Worth.
Is there a proposal that, or you have warehouses in that area to hub from?
Yeah, we have to have terminals there, of course, for our trucks and, warehouses.
And are those existing facilities?
that was not laid out in the case, unfortunately. Everything was kind of.
Right, so I was trying to, you proposing that
Yes,
you
yes.
build these facilities?
Absolutely.
Yeah, there would need to be infrastructure built.
On the 175 and 350, did you bring a break even that you thought that there might be a shift, or what's the break even point between those two, or you say over 4, it's even more valuable?
Could you
In
explain?
between, you answered the $1.75 and the $3.50. Was there a break even point in between those where the solutions would change?
Not that we found, because above $1.37, that was the fuel surcharge break-even point. Beyond that, the surcharge for truck grows at a much greater rate than rail, and we would not be able to find a break-even point between those. It would have to fall beneath essentially that $1.75 per gallon.
Is that what you illustrated in the, what was it, first and last slide, we had the options,
I believe so.
all the rates? 'Cause I thought it indicated that number 2 was a little different. So we moved number 2. Because isn't move number 2 at $1.75 lowest truck?
Yeah, the lowest is truck on the.
And the 350 actually goes to the trailer drayage. Is that correct?
I believe we
Yeah,
would
$2,
stick with.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The margin there is small enough that we feel like maintaining that same idea would be more beneficial than continuously swapping between the two, especially if we run into perhaps a chassis constraint or something else like that.
So that's under analysis.
But your point was you wouldn't shift them over,
No.
because it's not enough. That's what I'm assuming he's saying.
And on the risk of potentially not having chassis at the intermodal line or some other constraint.
David, you mentioned the environmental advantages of rail. How important is that to your customers and to your strategy here?
I believe that it's definitely a major marketing advantage. We've seen CSX and Norfolk Southern running TV ad campaigns touting the benefits of trains versus trucks. And I mentioned this a little earlier, but we've seen in the food industry, people really care about where their food's coming from and the integrity of their food. And I believe that we could create a campaign where we could make our customers aware of the costs of shipping food. There's actually also a movement called the locavore movement, which is only eat food sourced from within 100 miles. And part of the reason for that is because some people do realize the astronomical cost to the environment and greenhouse gases of shipping. So we believe that there is definitely a major marketing advantage there.
Your rates here, this does not include your equipment or anything. This is just your mileage, your cost, your revenue.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
On your, I think it was early on, but you had the number of trailers that you were going to convert to
Yes.
COFC, or to, yeah,
Yeah, it was 174.
100, right.
140.
So, and you, later in the presentation, you referred to the ability to have multi-mode so that you'd be able to change out the equipment type to meet customer needs and customer demands. Have you put any thought to, if you have 174 pieces of equipment and you have a nationwide network, what's the probability that you're going to have the right type of equipment in the right place to meet that specific customer need?
So based on the mileages we found, those cost breakpoints, we found that even based on the percentages, I believe it was slide 23, oh no, 20, I think it's a little further back. Or 4, I'm sorry, 25? That one, yes. So based on the cost breakpoints we found, it's really a small margin that's being used to OFC. And that's more based on need as customers demand, et cetera, and the availability of chassis at these intermodal hubs. Because on the whole, COFC will provide a cost benefit over TOFC. So we have this laid out here, and part of the ability of this hub and spoke structure that David talked about is we can easily transfer equipment between these hubs if we need to.
Good job.
Thank you all so much.
I'll close it.